You're a stranger to me. If you want to come in, the entrance fee is $30,000. It was Lynn's important wedding day. Dressed in jewelry and clothes I wouldn't normally wear, and wearing heels I wasn't used to, I headed to the venue. However, Lynn didn't let me into the venue easily. Suddenly, I was confused when asked to pay an entrance fee. Seeing my confusion, Tom, who was standing next to me, muttered a single phrase. "Let's go back," he whispered. At that moment, I could feel the tension leaving my body. Considering how I had been treated so far, I realized there was no need to persuade her just to attend the wedding. That thought crossed my mind. Yes. And with that, I accepted Tom's suggestion and left the venue. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of Lynn, looking triumphant. When will her character ever improve? Maybe it never will. Was I even right to try to interfere in Lynn's life? Such thoughts clouded my mind. 3 minutes after leaving the venue, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Lynn. I wondered what she wanted as I answered the call. Little did I know at the time that this incident would escalate into something much bigger. My name is Mary Nelson. I'm 43 years old. After graduating from college, I moved away from my hometown to work as an office worker at a construction company. Since my college days, I had always felt a sense of dread about entering the workforce. Just before joining the company, I was filled with various concerns, like whether I could handle the job or build good relationships with others. But the work environment was pleasant, and my colleagues were all kind, which soon dispelled my anxieties. Supported by my bosses, seniors, and peers, I was able to take my first step as a working professional. Every day was about getting through work while being helped by those around me. Of course, there were times when I got scolded or felt down, but I think I was able to continue working because of the positive work environment. After a few years on the job, I even had juniors, and my life had become busier yet more enjoyable than before. However, I began to face a personal issue. It was about not being able to get married. Actually, not just about getting married. I didn't even have a boyfriend. Some colleagues who joined the company after me got married. I often found myself unable to sincerely say, "Congratulations on your wedding." Would I remain single forever, left behind as everyone else got married? My mind was haunted by the worst possible outcomes, and I would often feel down alone. Then one day, I was invited to a mixer by a colleague. I was probably just there to make up the numbers or to make others look good. I could foresee feeling miserable if I went. But for some reason, I wanted to show my face there. On the day of the mixer, when I arrived at the designated place, some participants had already formed their own little groups. I found an empty seat and sat down, waiting for the mixer to start. I had a faint hope that something might change once it began. But my hope was quickly dashed. Even after the mixer started, the other participants were enjoying their own conversations. It seemed like I wasn't even in their line of sight. Before I knew it, my mind was filled with thoughts of how and when I could make excuses to leave. However, about an hour into the mixer, a man approached me. That man would later become my husband, Tom. "Is this seat taken?" "Yes." I couldn't respond well to his sudden approach, but Tom didn't seem to mind. "We've already introduced ourselves, so we know each other's names." "Mary, right? I noticed you were alone the whole time." "Oh, no, you didn't have to worry about me." Tom gave a light smile and took a sip from his glass. Come to think of it, Tom seemed to be drinking alone too. As I was vaguely thinking about this, Tom began to speak up. "I was drinking alone too, so I thought it would be nice to have someone to talk to." "Yes, I'd like that." It might not be the best way to say it, but we were like two leftovers. Maybe that's why, but somehow our wavelengths matched, and it felt comfortable talking to him. Before I knew it, the mixer, which had felt so long, was about to end. "It's almost over." As I was thinking I didn't want it to end, he made a suggestion. "Would you like to exchange contact information? I'd like to see you again if you're okay with it, Mary." Oh, yes, of course. I was so surprised to be asked for my contact information that I blurted out an absurdly loud response. But the thought of having another chance to meet him. I quickly took out my smartphone and we exchanged contact details. After that, Tom and I started to meet frequently. And over the course of a few months, we progressed from friends to a romantic relationship. I had always hoped to have a boyfriend someday, but I never imagined that a guy I met at a mixer would become my boyfriend. With every date, my feelings for Tom grew stronger. I just felt happy being with Tom, and I often hoped he felt the same way about me. I wished this time could go on forever. Eventually, I even started to hope that maybe, just maybe, I could marry Tom. 6 months into this lifestyle. While talking with Tom as usual, he suddenly looked troubled. What's wrong? Well, there's something I want to talk about. Tom took a deep breath and started to speak. What he told me was shocking. Tom revealed something surprising: he had been divorced once before. And apparently, he has a child named Lynn. But Lynn isn't his biological child nor his ex-wife's. They had adopted Lynn together during their marriage. However, following a particular argument, their marriage fell apart. Eventually, they got divorced. And since his ex-wife lost interest in Lynn, Tom took her in and has been raising her alone. He hasn't yet told her about this situation. He plans to tell Lynn when she becomes an adult. I should have mentioned this earlier. It must be a shock to hear this all of a sudden. Well, I was indeed surprised. But it didn't make me want to leave Tom. In fact, I wanted to help Tom raise Lynn. I thought about it. I'm serious about our future together, Mary. That's why I needed to tell you this. If this disappoints you, I'd understand. Disappointed? I'm happy you shared this with me, and I love everything about you, Tom. I want to be with you and share our lives together. When I shared my feelings, Tom's face lit up. Really? Of course. I wouldn't lie about this. Thank goodness. Thank you. Then, Tom shared more about Lynn. His expression was much softer than the tense one he had before. Would you like to meet Lynn? I think you'll be living together with us eventually. He looked down, slightly embarrassed as he muttered. Yes. I'd love to meet her. There was no reason for me to decline. I nodded with a smile. A week later, I visited Tom's house and met Lynn for the first time. Hello. Hello. After a brief introduction, Tom led the conversation. Lynn didn't look at me much. She wasn't on her phone, but she kept looking at the floor or the walls, never meeting my eyes. What's wrong? You seem off. Do I? It's nothing. Even after that, Lynn didn't look at me. Lynn, you're in middle school now, right? Well, Despite my attempts to engage her, her responses were somewhat indifferent. It's a tricky age, and maybe she doesn't want to talk to her father's girlfriend. Sensing that, I didn't push for communication. Then, 30 minutes later, when Tom went to the bathroom, Lynn, who seemed uninterested in me until now, suddenly started a conversation. Hey, are you gonna marry my dad? Well, we've been talking about it, yes. There was no need to lie. I honestly shared that I was considering marriage. Lynn then scrutinized me and snorted with laughter. You and my dad, huh? I guess it's okay, but Dad has terrible taste in women. Couldn't he find someone better? Excuse me? I was taken aback by her words and had to ask again. Why are you so surprised? I'm just saying what I think. It would have been nice if he dated someone prettier, then he could have bragged about it. Well, I hadn't expected such comments at our first meeting, and I struggled to respond. No matter what Lynn says, my desire to marry Tom hasn't changed. But can we live together harmoniously? Can I really be a good mother to her? My anxiety about our future life only grew. A year after meeting Lynn, Tom and I got married. Even though we had been meeting Lynn during that time, it seemed she still didn't like me. Her looks and attitudes, all seeming to find me annoying, bewildered me. Tom seemed troubled too. No matter how much he cautioned her, she wouldn't listen. He had apologized to me several times for Lynn's behavior. "I'm really sorry. I never imagined Lynn would be rude to you too." "It's okay, don't worry about it." Indeed, some of the things Lynn said were hurtful. But that never made me think of stopping the marriage. I vaguely hoped Lynn would calm down eventually. However, my wish didn't come true. 2 years after marrying Tom, Lynn had become more unruly than I could have ever imagined. "Hey! I want my allowance." "I just gave it to you." "What are you spending it on?" "Socializing with friends." "And, by the way, isn't my allowance too little? My friends get more." I was sure I was giving Lynn enough allowance. Yet, she claimed it wasn't enough. "Talking about luxuries. No means no. You're so useless." Lynn had been frequently hanging out with friends since middle school. The frequency increased in high school, and so did her demands for more allowance. "Seriously unbelievable. How dare you act like a mother when you're not even related by blood?" "What do you mean by acting like a mother? I may not be related by blood, but I am your mother now." Maybe I was a bit harsh. But Lynn wouldn't listen otherwise. "I'm so irritated. Getting all high and mighty. Who do you think you are, saying you're my mother?" No matter how much I tried, Lynn continued to say hurtful things to me. It's okay if she doesn't accept me as her mother, but this is a different matter. "Regardless of what you say, the fact is that I am your mother." "You just repeat the same thing. This isn't going anywhere." It's always like this. Lynn leaves before we can resolve our discussions. And the next day, we go through the same back and forth. I could understand if she only ignored what I said, but Lynn didn't listen to Tom either. "Hey, Lynn! Enough is enough. Don't trouble your mom like that." "What mom? She's just a stranger." "A stranger. I don't need to listen to her." "Lynn." Her grades had significantly dropped since middle school. Her behavior had worsened. I felt overwhelmed by everything. At first, I thought it was just her age, but now that she's in high school, I'm seriously worried about her future. But now that her personality is formed, I couldn't do much about Lynn. "Hey! Give me my allowance. Now. I just gave it to you. When did you spend it? What does it matter what I use it for? Haven't I told you before? I need it for hanging out with friends. What, you think it's okay for me to be left out?" Lynn always used her social life as a shield whenever her allowance was denied. "That's an extreme." "It's not extreme. You just don't understand at all." Where did I go wrong? I hate my past self for not being able to deal with Lynn properly. Even though she hasn't liked me from the beginning, maybe there was something more I could have done. Every time Lynn said something cruel, I felt not anger, but a sense of failure. 3 years later, Lynn, having graduated from high school, wasn't studying or working and was leading a lazy life. She often stayed home all day, but also went out whimsically. No matter how much I advised her, my words never seemed to reach her. "Waking up at this time again. Can't you start getting your act together?" What do you mean by properly? I need specifics to understand. What I mean by a proper life is so annoying. Don't bother explaining, it's such a hassle. Lynn interrupted me and started getting ready to go somewhere. Where are you going today? Does it matter? I'm an adult now. It's none of your business where I go or what I do. But, oh, so irritating. Oh, that's right. Give me some pocket money. When she was a student, I used to give her an allowance. Even beyond the set amount, she'd frequently beg for more. I regret spoiling her too much. But now, Lynn is a high school graduate. I wish she'd take care of her own finances, whether through a job or something else. If you claim to be an adult, at least earn your own money for leisure. God, you're so annoying. My plea never reached Lynn. Instead, she shocked me with her revelation. I don't need to work anymore. What? What do you mean? Surely you're not planning to. I can't stay in this house forever. I'm getting married. My husband said it's okay for me to be a stay-at-home wife, so I don't need to work. I was hearing this for the first time. My mouth fell open in shock. Marriage! I had no idea. Well, I'm telling you now. Lynn was grinning, oblivious to my feelings. Surely, marriage requires proper preparation and introductions, doesn't it? If you've decided, you should have told us sooner. Who is he? What does he do? Don't ask so much. I could bring him over sometime. Really? Please do. I couldn't believe Lynn was offering to introduce her fiancé herself. I was surprised, but I gladly accepted her proposal. That evening, I shared with Tom what I had discussed with Lynn during the day. Initially surprised, he soon had a look of relief on his face and murmured, "So, she's getting married, huh?" Despite not being related by blood, he had raised her with care, and she was no less important to him. It must have been a moment filled with deep emotions for him. After pondering for a while, Tom's gaze fell on the newspaper, appearing somewhat lonely. Later on, Lynn, as promised, brought her fiancé over. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ricky." His voice was clear and behavior was confident. They gave me the impression of a genuinely nice young man. Ricky works in sales at a major trading company. He met Lynn during high school, fell in love at first sight, and has been together ever since. It was such a heartwarming story that it made me smile. Lynn, too, seemed to have a softer expression than usual. An hour later, the greetings concluded, and Lynn left the house with Ricky. She had met a wonderful person. The fact that Lynn had treated me harshly hadn't changed, and I had no intention of forgiving her. Yet, seeing her smile somehow made me feel relieved and brought a smile to my face as well. A year later, the day of Lynn and Ricky's wedding arrived. I was overjoyed to be able to see Lynn in her bridal attire. I prepared myself, my heart racing with excitement. Dressed in jewelry and clothes I don't usually wear, and high-heeled pumps, I headed to the wedding venue. I couldn't help but notice Tom's hands seemed to tremble as he drove. Was it from excitement or nervousness? Probably both. Both gave how much he was looking forward to this wedding. Upon arriving at the venue and entering, there were luxurious chandeliers and decorations, and I couldn't help but be dazzled, no matter my age. I've been to friends' and acquaintances' weddings at places like this before, but the awe never fades, no matter how many times I experience it. "Oh, you're here." Lynn approached us as we were looking around the venue. It seemed she had been waiting for us. "How are things going?" "Never mind that." Lynn didn't answer my question but pointed at me and said, "You're a stranger to me. If you want to come in, the entrance fee is $30,000. I was at a loss for words. I hadn't expected her to treat me with such disdain here. Seeing my confusion, Tom, who was standing next to me, spoke up. "Let's go." At that moment, I felt the tension leave my body. Indeed, I had been looking forward to the wedding. However, the harassment from Lynn hadn't changed. Was there a need to force myself to attend the wedding of someone who had been hostile toward me? Lynn's words had rapidly cooled my enthusiasm for the wedding. Yes. I accepted Tom's suggestion and left the venue. As we were leaving, Lynn's triumphant expression caught my eye. We exited the venue and got into the car. There was a heavy silence between Tom and me. Neither of us have the energy to talk or find a topic to discuss. I was overwhelmed by a sense of futility and let out an involuntary sigh. Did happiness just slip away again? While I was lost in thought, about 3 minutes after leaving the venue, my phone rang. Lynn's name was displayed on the screen. Why would she call after sending us away? As I hesitated, the call ended abruptly. But then it rang again. Call after call came in, only to be disconnected by her. It was a perplexing sight. And then, on the next call, I cautiously answered. That moment. Hey! Come back quickly! Lynn's voice pierced my ear. What? What's this all about? Just come back. How can I? We're already on our way home, and besides, after you told us to leave, now you want us back? Ricky got angry at me. Why did you send your own parents away? He asked. Hey, come back quickly. Lynn's self-centeredness was astonishing. Did she really think a plea would make us return? What? You want us back because you got scolded? Just forget all that. Just come back. The wedding will be ruined if it goes on like this. Lynn pleaded in a teary voice. However, her voice didn't move me. You shouldn't have said strange things in the first place. What's this about a $30,000 entrance fee? Then, at least ask Dad to come back. Lynn's voice was so loud that Tom, who was driving, could hear the conversation. There's no way we're going back. What are you talking about? Neither Dad nor Mom is coming back, so deal with it yourself. Mom, you can hang up the phone. I did as Tom suggested and hung up the phone. Lynn was making a fuss until the very end, but I ignored it. After hanging up, I immediately put my phone in my bag. When I checked my phone after getting home, as expected, there were several missed calls. All from Lynn, of course. The number easily exceeded 20, and I couldn't help but laugh at her desperation. The calls had stopped abruptly a few minutes earlier, perhaps she had finally given up. Ultimately, there was no contact from Lynn for the rest of the day. Nor the following day, nor the day after. She must have been scolded severely by Ricky and had no desire to contact us. We also had no inclination to reach out to her, leaving things as they were. However, a week later, Lynn suddenly showed up at our house. Seeing how angry she looked, I didn't dare let her in, fearing what she might do. I decided to deal with her at the entrance. What's up? Why are you here all of a sudden? Why didn't you come to the wedding? I asked you so much. Why would we? I called you so many times, and you didn't pick up. Ricky was really angry, and I got cold looks from his relatives. What are you going to do about it? It's astonishing how self-centered she is. I sighed and responded to Lynn. We did nothing wrong. We left because you started talking about an entrance fee. And we didn't want to come back because, honestly, it's because of how you've acted all this time. My past behavior? Lynn tilted her head, seemingly unaware of her actions. Doesn't she realize what she's been doing? It's more concerning than infuriating. You ignored us, went out to play, kept asking for money. You throw a tantrum over just a bit of scolding and lock yourself in your room. At first, we tolerated it because we thought you were just going through a phase, but we all have our limits. Huh? That issue? Can you please not refer to it as a tantrum? It makes me sound like a child. If you're asking me to stop, does that mean you acknowledge that your behavior warranted such a description? If it didn't, you would deny it. I seized the opportunity to counter. I saw the opportunity and took it. If I let it pass, who knows when we'll get the chance to talk face to face again. That's what I thought. However, Lynn deflected my response and changed the subject. Even after all these years, your know-it-all attitude really gets on my nerves. After all, you're a stranger to me. Stop trying to boss me around. If that's the case, then as a stranger, you shouldn't be asking me for money, right? Got it? Lynn looked at me with a face full of resentment. Obviously frustrated at not being able to retort. Enough. I don't care about you anymore. Just go away. Okay, then. Bye. As Lynn stormed off with her parting shot, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time, I had conveyed my thoughts so directly, and it felt liberating. Now, for the time being. She might not come barging in anymore. That moment made me realize. True enough, she didn't return. But soon I encountered something unexpected. A month after Lynn's last visit, I met Ricky downtown. Hello, Ricky. I felt it necessary to apologize for the wedding incident, so I initiated a conversation. Sorry about the trouble during the wedding. I got entangled in our family drama. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Lynn was at fault, after all. But Ricky seemed uneasy. As if my approach caught him off guard. Is everything okay? Oh, are you busy? I'm sorry. I'll leave then. No, it's not that. Just, have you been discharged from the hospital? Discharged? Huh? It seemed that Ricky had been informed by Lynn that I was hospitalized. I'm sorry. I wanted to apologize for the wedding stuff, but I was told you were hospitalized and couldn't be contacted, and that no one except your father and Lynn could visit you. Hospitalized? Why would they say I was hospitalized? Yes. So, I didn't expect to meet you here. I'm sorry, I must have seemed rude. No, not at all. You've done nothing wrong. I conveyed my thoughts to Ricky, despite being puzzled. Ricky's expression softened slightly at my words. But why would she lie about you being hospitalized? Indeed, why would she lie about such a thing? What was Lynn trying to achieve? Recalling the tumultuous past, I desperately thought of what Lynn might have planned. What Lynn tends to think. Oh. Maybe. A thought suddenly struck me. I couldn't be sure if I was right, but decided to share it with Ricky as one possibility. Maybe she didn't want to be scolded by you? Didn't want to be scolded? I heard from her that you were quite angry about the wedding incident, right? Maybe she said something to garner sympathy, thinking that even someone angry would soften if they heard her parents were hospitalized. Does that make sense? I see. When I suggested a possible reason, Ricky seemed to understand. Indeed, after the wedding, I was so angry that I barely spoke to her. Hearing that her mother was hospitalized made me feel like continuing to be angry was wrong. Ah. I fell right into Lynn's trap, didn't I? How embarrassing. Ricky frowned. He was clearly upset about being deceived. What should I say to comfort him? As I was pondering, Ricky spoke up again. But if that's the case, then why? What's wrong? Ricky looked even more perplexed than when he first saw me. Curious, I asked for more details. Lately, Lynn has been saying she's going to visit you in the hospital, leaving the house often. She says she's staying at her parents' house because her dad is lonely. Back home? But she hasn't been there. At that moment, the worst-case scenario flashed through my mind. Should I tell Ricky, or should I keep quiet? No, I definitely need to say something. He must have realized it himself by now. Could it be that she's not cheating, is she? Yeah, you think so too, don't you? It's just not possible that she's staying at a friend's house so often. Ricky's face turned pale rapidly. The lies he had been told, the possibility of infidelity. How his feelings towards Lynn might have changed in these few minutes. I can't be certain, but it's clear they're not positive. Should consider hiring a detective agency for an investigation. Not forcing you, but... That was the best advice I could offer. Having evidence would never hurt. Whether to divorce or not is up to Ricky. He doesn't need to rush, he should take his time to decide. Later, Ricky, after a moment of contemplation, said with determination, "Thank you. I'll consult with a detective agency." His eyes showed resolve, yet also a hint of sadness. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Ricky. According to the detective agency's investigation, it was confirmed that Lynn was cheating. He sounded exhausted just by his voice, having been shown overwhelming evidence. But cheating. It was just a speculation, yet facing the reality was painful. I'm so sorry. for my daughter causing such trouble. It's okay. Struggling to find the right words for the disheartened man, I could sense Ricky taking a deep breath. And he said, I'm going to divorce her. Is that okay? Of course. I have no right to stop Ricky's decision. Especially when my daughter is the cause of his trouble. Ricky mentioned he wanted to have a discussion, including us. He could have gone through a lawyer, but he wanted to hear everything straight from the source first. There was no way to refuse. I, too, wanted to hear Lynn's side of the story. So, we scheduled the meeting for a week later and ended the call. What would happen next? Would Lynn admit to her actions? Overwhelmed by anxiety, I sank into the nearby sofa to escape my thoughts. A week later, Tom, Ricky, a sullen Lynn, and I were all gathered in my house. What's this about? I have plans, you know. Lynn said, lounging back dismissively. You could have discussed whatever you wanted without dragging me here, couldn't you? Couldn't you two have talked alone? Didn't want to? It's not like that. We wanted your parents to be involved too. I said I didn't want to, but you went ahead anyway. How selfish. The last thing I wanted was to be called selfish by Lynn. I was not the only one who thought so. But Ricky, unfazed, just nodded. So, what is it? Hurry up, I'm doing you a favor by being here. Lynn said, clapping her hands impatiently. Look, Lynn. We should get a divorce. Ricky said, silencing the room. Lynn seemed unable to comprehend what was being said to her. What? Divorce? Why? I don't have the confidence to continue with you. You're selfish, spend too much. I haven't been selfish or anything. It's not just that. Ricky continued, pulling out a stack of documents. You've been cheating, haven't you? I had a detective investigate. What? A detective? That's so low. Instead of denying the cheating, her reaction to the detective indicated something guilt-ridden. And didn't you wonder? Why is your supposedly hospitalized mother-in-law here? Didn't you find that strange? Oh. Lynn might have spun a web of lies too vast for her own comprehension. Seeing me, her face turned pale. Mom, why are you here? How about you stop acting so innocent? And now you call me Mom. Listen, I know about the lie you told Ricky that I was hospitalized, about your so-called visits to your affair partner under the guise of visiting me, and about staying at your parents' home because Dad was lonely. That's... Lynn's face was a picture of despair. Had she truly believed her lies would never be uncovered? And just so you know, I was the one who suggested Ricky consult a detective agency. What? Why would you suggest such a thing? I'm your daughter, aren't I? Couldn't you have taken my side for once? I'm your daughter, you say? But we're legally strangers, right? So, I'm not your mother or anything, am I? It's too late to start calling me Mom now. That's exactly why you're seen as selfish. Lynn always tried to manipulate situations to her advantage. I couldn't be manipulated by her any longer. Enough. Everyone is just the worst. Why do you all treat me so horribly? Have you ever considered my feelings? I could say the same to you. The reason things have come to this is that you've lived your life however you pleased. I used to love Lynn and tolerated her whims. But after being lied to and cheated on, I can't trust her anymore, nor do I want to continue living with her. All I want now is a divorce. Divorce. Though a normal request under these circumstances, Lynn seemed unable to comprehend. Why? Of course. You have to pay for what you've done. No. Absolutely not. Lynn began to throw a tantrum, as usual. I've done nothing wrong. Yes, I cheated. But ultimately, it's Ricky's fault. Me. Ricky was shocked by the sudden accusation. But the reason she gave was also selfish. You weren't attractive enough. Boring to be with. I wanted to break up, really. But then you landed a good job, so I thought there might be some financial benefits. Really now? I almost leaned in, angered by Lynn's words. But I reminded myself that this was between Lynn and Ricky and held back. So, you propose, and now you want a divorce and alimony? Do you think I, a housewife, have money? Weren't you the one who said it was okay for me to be a stay-at-home wife? You should take responsibility and support me for life. You only see me for my money, don't you? Of course. I can't see you as a man anymore, so I'll continue my relationship with my boyfriend. I was appalled by her cruel words. And I felt a sense of despair. But then, oh. Lynn had a sudden change of heart. I'll agree to the divorce. Really? What sudden change is this? I looked up to see Lynn wearing an eerily bright smile as she looked at Tom. Hey, Dad. Can you give me money? What? You're not a stranger, but Dad isn't. You'll surely take my side, right? Please, Dad, for your cute daughter. Lynn approached Tom with a cajoling tone. That scene was unbearably vile. All eyes turned to Tom, who had been silent since Ricky and the others arrived. What decision would he make? I can't do that. Why not? Because I'm not your real father. You're adopted. By your logic, we're not related by blood, so we're strangers. The atmosphere froze. Not just Lynn, but Ricky's face also stiffened. Also, hearing everything, how can you say you've done nothing wrong after living so selfishly? I raised you, hoping you'd become a kind person, even if we're not related by blood. This has to be a lie. You're just saying this because you don't want to pay the alimony, right? I know it. It makes no sense for me to lie now. Unlike you. Anyway, neither your mother nor I will help you. It's a good chance to dissolve the adoption. From now on, you're on your own. I saw tears fall from Lynn's eyes. Please, don't abandon me. I can't suddenly live on my own. Mom, Ricky, say something. Sorry, but I agree with Dad. You can't just use us when you're in trouble. You've caused enough trouble, so now it's time to handle things yourself. Lynn turned to Ricky, seeking support. Ricky, you're on my side, right? No. I can't live with you anymore. It's sad not knowing your real parents, but if I stay with you, I'll ruin myself too. Please, someone. Don't abandon me. I admit I was wrong. I'll change, I promise. Usually, Lynn's tantrums would get her what she wanted, but not today. She was crying and repeating that she was at fault. But all her words sounded like lies. Surely, once things settle down, she'll likely return to her usual self-indulgent ways. We all watched Lynn silently until she agreed to the divorce and the payment of alimony. Ultimately, whether Lynn resigned herself to the situation or not, she accepted the divorce. True to her nature, she didn't offer a single apology until the very end. Later, through a lawyer, Ricky filed for divorce and alimony. Tom and I proceeded with the dissolution of the adoption. Lynn seemed resigned, no longer displaying her usual bravado. How would she manage her life after losing everything? It was a mystery only she could solve. Even after dissolving the adoption, Lynn came to our house a few times asking for money, but we turned her away, now being strangers. Her sad face was noticeable, but we no longer had to care. Over time, my feelings for her had completely vanished. And it seemed Tom felt the same. Considering how kind Tom is, I thought he might still care for Lynn even after dissolving the adoption. However, he stopped mentioning Lynn's name entirely. That alone made it clear just how angry Tom must be. A year has passed since then. Tom and I are enjoying a peaceful life, possibly because we've cut ties with Lynn. I can't help but think that being able to live such a happy life now is surely because we've ceased all contact with Lynn. In the end, by consistently turning her away, Lynn stopped coming to our house. We don't know where she is or what she's doing. Yet, the fact that I'm not worried at all is proof that my feelings have completely cooled off. Lately, our joy has been traveling together. Making up for the time lost to Lynn's drama, we cherish our moments together. We're even planning our next trip. Where will we go next? Maybe going abroad. With Tom, any destination promises joy. I thought this while flipping through a travel magazine nearby. Are you okay, Emily? You look a bit off. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. Becoming a fifth grader and entering her rebellious phase, my daughter recently started to overtly distance herself from my husband. He seemed displeased with this situation, but it's just a phase. We decided to let her be, convincing ourselves to maintain our family dynamic. However, a few days later, the daughter who had been avoiding her father and showing a rebellious attitude suddenly said she wanted to sleep with him. As I was puzzled by our daughter's sudden change, my husband said with a smug grin, "It seems she had a bad dream last night. Scared to sleep alone, huh? She's still a kid after all." He appeared overly pleased yet with an odd smile, clearly delighted to be relied upon by his daughter. Contrary to my buoyant husband, however, something seemed off about our daughter. The morning after she slept with her father, she would always look spaced out, and her pajamas would be unusually disheveled, with buttons undone and strange wrinkles. What could be happening to her? But since she insists she's fine, I can't meddle too much, and I've been anxiously passing the days. Then one day, I was suddenly called in by her elementary school and was asked a surprising question by the school nurse. "Your daughter seems to be under a lot of stress. Has anything changed at home recently?" After that, my husband started acting strangely. He turned pale, sweating profusely, clenching his fists, and his gaze darting around restlessly. Seeing my husband like this momentarily took my worry for my daughter away as I asked, "What's wrong with you?" "It's nothing. Oh, I just remembered something urgent. I need to step out for a bit." He tried to flee the scene in a hurry. Clearly, something was suspicious. He must know something. Intuitively feeling this, I grabbed his wrist. "Hold on. What's so urgent? More important than something about Emily?" Pressed by my tone, he froze in his tracks, intending to leave. And then, the shocking revelation he eventually shared. "My name is Michelle. I'm a 39-year-old housewife, living with my husband John and our daughter Emily. Though I might be biased as a parent, my daughter is quite beautiful and cute. We've been living happily together as a family of 3, without wanting for anything. Recently, my daughter has begun to show a rebellious attitude, possibly due to hitting puberty. She hasn't changed much towards me, a fellow female, just becoming a bit cheekier. She still talks to me about her day as before. However, her attitude towards her father has noticeably changed. Today, at school. I'm home. Emily, what were you and Mom talking about?" "It's none of your business, Dad. I was talking to Mom." "Come on, that's cold. You can talk to Dad too. We're a family, aren't we?" "No. Go away, Dad." Even when her father tried to engage her, she would reject him or not respond, and on particularly bad days, she would even ignore him. "Emily's been really cold to me lately, don't you think? Could you talk to her for me?" "She's been pushing back on me too. It's probably just a phase. Girls can be really against their fathers at this age. We should just watch over her quietly." While it's great to see her grow, as a father, he's clearly frustrated by being treated coldly by his adorable daughter. But anything I could say might just make her more rebellious. Thinking this, I hesitated to intervene, and the distance between my husband and daughter grew day by day. Then, on a certain holiday, when I returned home from grocery shopping for dinner, the atmosphere between my husband and daughter in the living room was more tense than usual. "I'm home. What's going on with you two?" "It's nothing," my daughter muttered sulkily, looking down, while my husband also remained silent, awkwardly turning away. Surely, he must have pestered her as usual and spoiled her mood. Thinking it best not to meddle clumsily, I simply replied, "Really?" and headed to the kitchen to put away the groceries in the fridge. After all, they are family, even if things are a bit strained. I figured their relationship hadn't deteriorated to the point where they couldn't talk it out, and somehow, they'd make up on their own. But, observing from the kitchen for a while, my expectations were way off. Emily went back to her room without saying anything further. Surprised by her behavior, which was unlike her, I confronted John.
Hey, what happened? It's not like Emily to act that way.
But John, as usual, avoided my gaze.
I don't know. She just got in a mood on her own.
Even so, her behavior was unusually off. Emily doesn't usually retreat to her room without saying anything. There must be something between her and John that they're hiding.
Are you sure there's nothing you're aware of?
Almost certain John had done something. I pressed him further, but all I got was a persistent I don't know no matter how many times I asked. Reluctant to question Emily about what was going on, I grew increasingly anxious about the uneasy atmosphere at home. However, the next day, I witnessed something even more perplexing. Somehow, John and Emily ended up sleeping in the same bed. Originally, John and I shared a room, and Emily had her own, but since that day, there were occasional mornings I'd find Emily in John's bed. I wondered what had gotten into Emily after all her avoidance. As I puzzled over Emily's sudden change to John, with a smug grin, said,
"Seems like she had a nightmare last night. She crawled into my bed saying she wanted to sleep together. Oh, still such a child."
John, proud yet with a somewhat unsettling smile, seemed overjoyed to be needed by Emily. But, contrary to my elated husband, something was off with Emily. Since then, Emily started sleeping with John every few days, and on those mornings, she always seemed out of it. Moreover, her pajamas were disheveled, with buttons undone and strange wrinkles. Emily used to be the type to wake up bright and early, but now she seemed dazed and somehow pained. What on earth was going on?
"Emily, are you okay? You seem off on the mornings you sleep in Dad's bed."
When I expressed my concern, Emily forced a clumsy smile and said, "I'm fine.
Don't worry about it. It's nothing."
Though she clearly seemed to be forcing it, since she insisted she was fine, I couldn't pry too much. Worried yet perplexed by my daughter's changes, I thought it best to keep watching over her. Several weeks passed in this state. Finally, I came to know what had been happening to Emily. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I received a call from the school nurse at Emily's school.
"Your daughter is in a serious situation. Could you come to the school so we can discuss the details?"
The nurse's grave tone made my heart sink. What could have happened to Emily? Had she been seriously injured? Was she all right? Driven by anxiety, I rushed to the elementary school. Upon arrival, I was shown to a reception room, and soon after, the nurse who had called me came in. Looking around anxiously for Emily and not seeing her, the nurse said, "Please, calm down.
I'm sorry for calling you out of the blue. Your daughter is currently sleeping in the infirmary. It seemed like she was under a lot of stress, so we wanted to ask about her situation at home."
"Stress?
What do you mean?"
The words from the nurse were so unexpected, I had to ask again. The nurse explained patiently. It seems Emily had gone to the infirmary to change because a button on her uniform had popped off while getting ready for gym class. When she took off her clothes, the nurse discovered she had a widespread case of shingles on her back. Shingles are often caused by stress or fatigue. That's when the nurse asked her,
"Emily, have you been going through something unpleasant? Like, are you pushing yourself too hard on something?"
At that point, Emily suddenly started crying. Crying uncontrollably as if a dam had broken, the nurse couldn't ask any more and instead contacted me, knowing I'd be aware of the home situation.
"It doesn't have to be anything major. Have you noticed any changes in Emily's behavior recently?"
She asked me with a serious expression, looking me straight in the eye. As I recounted my daughter's recent behavior, I responded,
"I think she might have entered a rebellious phase. Her attitude towards my husband and me has changed compared to before. I'm not sure to what extent that has stressed her out, though."
While recalling recent changes in Emily, I realized something that concerned me.
Oh, I've noticed that Emily seems to have suddenly gained weight. Her food intake hasn't changed, and her snacking is normal, I believe.
I had felt that Emily, who was always of a standard build, had suddenly started to look chubbier. However, as I told the school nurse, there hadn't been any significant changes in her eating habits, nor had her snacking increased unusually. Yet, the visible change in her physique over a short period made me suddenly worried that something not good might be happening to her. While I had noticed and been concerned about her change in physique, I hadn't at all noticed that she had developed shingles. I had experienced this disease myself once before, and it was quite painful. The guilt of not noticing my daughter's discomfort weighed on me. As I was led to the infirmary and then took her home. Emily seemed a bit better after resting in the infirmary, not looking too pale. However, she kept a gloomy expression, looking down the entire time, and wouldn't even look me in the eye properly. Unable to say anything to her, we returned home in silence. Upon arriving home, my husband, John, had already finished work and was back. "Hey, welcome back," he said, turning towards us from the sofa, his demeanor as usual. But the moment Emily saw John, she made a face as if she'd seen something dreadful and retreated to her room without a word. I felt something was wrong. Emily had avoided John before. But she had never shown such blatant aversion and disgust. Could it be that John was the cause of Emily's stress? Contrary to my deep concerns, John casually asked, "You're back late. Anything happen?" His tone didn't seem worried about Emily, just making conversation. Feeling a bit irritated with him, I simply responded, "Actually, I was called by Emily's school nurse this afternoon and went to pick her up." I then explained everything that happened today, about the widespread shingles on Emily's body, how she started crying when I tried to ask her about it, making it impossible to continue, and how she seemed to have gained weight recently. My concern for Emily grew as I spoke, and my gaze gradually fell. "The nurse thinks she might be dealing with some significant stress. Do you have any idea what it could be about?" Hoping John might know something I hadn't noticed, I looked up at him only to be shocked by his appearance. He had gone pale, was sweating profusely, and clenching his fists. His reaction made me momentarily forget my worries for Emily. "What's wrong? Are you okay? You suddenly look so pale." "It's nothing. Oh, I just remembered I have an urgent errand, gotta step out for a bit," John stammered, attempting to flee the living room. His panic struck me as suspicious the moment I mentioned Emily. His panic was so extreme that it only heightened my suspicions and sense of unease. Feeling a surge of suspicion, I instinctively grabbed his wrist as he tried to leave. "Wait a minute. What errand could possibly be more important than Emily suffering like this?" Overwhelmed by my tone, John froze. Fear evident in his eyes, confirming my suspicion that he knew something. Just as I was about to press him further, Emily burst into the living room. Her face distorted with anger and tears streaming down her face. "I hated sleeping in the same bed as Dad. But he said if I didn't, he would do something terrible to you, Mom, so I couldn't refuse. I tried to bear it, but then my body started itching and hurting so much." Through her sobs, Emily desperately shared her ordeal. Finally, John's true nature was exposed. John reluctantly began to tell the story. It seems that a coworker of his, who also has a child Emily's age, frequently boasted about their great parent-child relationship. Feeling jealous and frustrated with Emily's avoidance during her rebellious phase, John wanted to create a situation where he and Emily appeared close. His solution was to have Emily sleep in the same bed as him. However, Emily, forced by John's threats, was far from sleeping peacefully due to itching and pain all over her body. Fearing that leaving the bed might result in me being harmed, Emily tried to endure the discomfort, tossing and turning all night. The disheveled pajamas and her grogginess the following morning were due to the restless night, not sleeping well. Understandably, this situation caused her stress. Emily had been sneaking food from the fridge at night to cope with her stress. Her recent weight gain was also due to John's actions.
I thought if I just endured it, Mom wouldn't have to suffer, but the itchiness got worse. I was sleepy and irritable. I didn't know what to do anymore.
Moved by her distress, I hugged her tightly. Why hadn't I noticed sooner? My daughter had been making such sacrifices to protect me. Meanwhile, John was shaking for another reason.
To spill everything like this, what have you done? No, Michelle, it's not what you think. I didn't threaten Emily in any way,
John said, clearly flustered and pale-faced. Seeing John still trying to deny his actions infuriated me.
Don't play games. You're saying Emily is lying? Her suffering is evident. The fact that she's under such stress is proof enough.
I shouted, my anger unabated, as John muttered excuses, looking away.
I just wanted to get along with Emily. I had no idea she was feeling so stressed. To force her into compliance with your threats and then say that? I'm appalled. You have no right to call yourself Emily's father. We're getting a divorce.
Being with someone who used threats to fulfill his own desires at the expense of his daughter, especially when those threats involved me, was unthinkable. I must not be of much importance to him, I realized. With that thought, I initiated the conversation about divorce with my husband. John began to protest in panic, but I was unyielding.
Hey, listen to me. I admit I was wrong. I'll make amends. Please, let's not talk about divorce.
My patience completely wore thin with my husband's pathetic clinging.
To want to satisfy yourself by threatening your own daughter to bend her to your will, I'm better off without you. Your presence is detrimental to Emily's growth. If you refuse to accept the divorce, I'll report you to the police. And of course, I'll inform your parents as well.
With a firm stance, I said this, and my husband just collapsed, weakened and defeated. Not long after that incident, our divorce was finalized smoothly. Perhaps because he lacked close relationships at work or in the neighborhood, my husband began to feel a profound loneliness after the divorce. He didn't know what he was working for anymore, he was just lonely. That was entirely his own doing. I felt no sympathy for him. Eventually, he couldn't focus on his job and ended up resigning. Abandoned by his daughter and me, and losing his job, he finally seemed to recognize his mistake. Sometime after our divorce, he called, wanting to reconcile.
Michelle, Emily, I was truly in the wrong before. I forced Emily to pretend we were a close family, and I'm sincerely regretful now. Can you give me another chance? I want to be a proper family with you both this time.
His appeals of regret are too little, too late. Both my daughter and I have long since emotionally distanced ourselves from him. His desperate clinging did nothing to sway me.
I'm sorry, but I can no longer trust you. I'd prefer if you didn't contact us again.
John persisted for a while but eventually realized his efforts were futile and gave up. With a voice filled with resignation, he bid farewell and the call ended. After the divorce, Emily and I moved to my parents' house. Located in a quiet countryside, hours away from where John and I lived. Whether it was the physical distance from John or the severance of parental ties, Emily's condition gradually improved. Her shingles healed, her weight normalized. And she began to sleep soundly, smiling and enjoying her days. In a tranquil environment, free from any threats, we began a new life of peace and well-being. My name is Allie Smith, I'm 30 years old. My husband, Tom, is a 33-year-old office worker. I experienced stage 0 breast cancer 8 years ago. And now, the breast cancer is back. Sis, you're finally getting discharged tomorrow, huh? I've had a recurrence of breast cancer and am currently hospitalized after undergoing a mastectomy of my left breast. Sis? It's really a shock to lose a breast as a woman. I was prepared, but still. The surgery was successful, but my heart is still heavy. Then, my husband, Tom, came in triumphantly. My husband, who suddenly tells me he wants a divorce while I'm hospitalized for breast cancer.
I'm going to remarry because my lover is pregnant. Move back to your parents' house once you're done with the surgery. The apartment we're living in is mine. I laughed at Tom, who knew nothing, idiot. You know nothing, do you? I revealed a certain truth to him. Then, he went crazy, then my whole plan is ruined. What's going to happen now? There have been various things leading up to this. Thank you for everything today. No, thank you. How about it? Did you find any good places? I have another viewing tomorrow, but my heart is set on the last property we saw. I was working at my father's real estate agency at the time. I was assigned to handle Tom when he came looking for a place. That concludes our explanation. Please read the contract thoroughly, and if you're satisfied, sign it and stamp it. This. Saying that, Tom handed me a small note. I don't want us to stop seeing each other after today. When I got home and opened the note, it contained Tom's email address and phone number. Honestly, I could have gotten that information from the documents, but that would be a breach of privacy. I also felt sad that we wouldn't see each other again. Why can't we date? You hate me, don't you? If you tell me what's wrong, I'll try to fix it. After all, we've already been on what feels like 5 dates. I can't accept that we can't date. It's not like that. I don't dislike Tom at all. In fact, I have a good feeling about her. Then, I've decided not to marry anyone. Why? Did you commit a crime? Or if you're just looking for an excuse to reject me, I don't mind if you just turn me down clearly. It's not that. I think you wouldn't be happy if you married me. If you're going to dodge the issue with such vague words, then forget it. Tom turned his back in anger. This is fine, this is the right choice. Even so, I can't lie to my own feelings. Tom! When I called out, Tom turned around. He looked like he was hoping I would call him back. He probably wanted a proper explanation. I had breast cancer 3 years ago. There's a high chance it could come back. That's why I might not be able to look after you for the rest of my life. Having a sick person in the family is the hardest on the family members. I don't want to put you through that. Also, due to chemotherapy, my ovarian function has declined, and it's been said it would be difficult for me to have children. I think it's rare to find a woman who brings so little to a marriage. That's why I can't date you. It's because I like you. I might not be able to make Allie happy. But if I marry you, I'll be happy. I like you, no matter what. What does it matter if you're sick, or if we don't have children? My happiness is walking through life together with you. I don't wish for anything else. Let's trust in Tom's broad-mindedness and kindness. With such a strong declaration, he'll surely stay unshaken, no matter what happens. Did you go to the hospital? When he came home from work, the first thing Tom asked was that. For over a month, I've had many days when I felt unwell. Yeah, I went for a checkup. It's breast cancer. It's been 8 years since the last time, but now it's stage 2. I have to have surgery on my breast. Is that so? We've been married for 5 years, so I thought maybe it wouldn't come back, but you never know. Surgery means it can be cured, right? Then let's look on the bright side, let's be positive. I was worried about how Tom would react, but I was relieved that he took it more brightly than expected. So, you're going to be hospitalized, huh? When? I'll be hospitalized a week from now, and the stay is for 10 days. Then maybe I should make lunch for you every day. Hospital food is bland and not very tasty, right? I wouldn't know since I've never been hospitalized. Tom was good at cooking. I'm technically a stay-at-home wife, but on days when Tom comes home early, he cooks dinner. That's it! I'll make lunch for both of us and we can eat together during the hospital's dinner time. I'm gonna visit every day. Tom's cheerfulness was a saving grace. The surgery went well. When I woke up, my sister Kelly was there for me. Since our parents couldn't take time off work, she came in their place. Kelly, what about your job? I was relieved to hear my voice come out clearly.
I had no memory after being anesthetized, and the surgery was already over. Anesthesia is amazing, I realized again.
I'm what you'd call a freeloader, living off my parents' money at home, a royal freeloader.
Kelly was trying to turn everything into a joke.
I'll come every day to keep you company and kill time. Write down a list of any magazines or books you want. Nights in the hospital are long, and it's tough to pass the time. Sure, there's always a TV now, but smartphones are banned and it's boring.
The anesthesia had worn off, and my head was starting to clear up. It had been a long time since Kelly and I had such a long conversation.
Hey, Allie, you're looking good. Kelly came too, huh? That must be reassuring for you.
Tom also stopped by after work, but he didn't bring the lunch I was secretly hoping for. He stayed for about 10 minutes, maybe.
It seems like Allie is in good spirits, and you sisters have a lot to catch up on after so long. So, I'll leave you to it.
What? Tom left shortly after arriving. I'm gonna go buy something to drink. What would you like, sis? Kelly quickly changed the subject. I still couldn't move much. Could you get me some tea, please? I sent Kelly off with that request, but she didn't return for nearly an hour. I started to get worried. Kelly came back, but without any drinks. Her face was slightly pale. You were gone for a while. Did you go to the cafeteria and eat something? What? What's with the scared look? Did you see a ghost or something? I just can't keep it to myself. What are you talking about? Tom is cheating. What? I went down to the first floor to buy a drink. That's when I saw Tom with a young woman, talking in front of the parking lot. When I was listening to their conversation, it sounded like they were dating. No way. Are you sure you didn't mistake someone else for him? I wish that were the case. I recorded it on impulse. Want to listen? My feelings were torn between not wanting to hear it and needing to know. Kelly didn't wait for my response and started playing the recording. When is your wife getting discharged? I was told she'd be in the hospital for 10 days. Then, let me go to your house during that time and take care of everything. I want to look after you. Huh, Sarah, you're quite domestic. You don't look the part though.
Stop it. What's that supposed to mean? But, making you happy is what makes me happiest. Ever since I joined the company, I've had feelings for you. The shock when I found out she was married was unbearable. It makes me happy just to hear you say that, even though I'm 10 years older.
I have a thing for older men. The moment I saw you when I first joined the company, I knew she was the one. But, it seems like I met you in the wrong order. If it had been before you met your wife, you would have chosen me, right?
Of course. I've realized since dating you, Sarah, that I prefer someone healthy. Allie was always tired and bedridden even before her recurrence was discovered. A marriage without communication is just boring. I wanted to cherish our mealtime conversations, but in the end, I was cooking and eating alone.
They say conversation is the best spice. What would happen if she knew I was here? Would she get jealous? I wonder. Allie is so oblivious, I doubt she suspects I have a lover at all. It doesn't matter if she finds out, actually. But, there's something that makes it necessary for her to know. Tom's mind must be racing with what Sarah's insinuating.
I'm pregnant. What?
Remember, we went to a hotel after that drinking party? Oh, when I was completely drunk. It's from that night. Can you even be sure? We've been together since then. Women just know these things. You're going to divorce your wife and marry me, right? There was a moment of silence. What answer would Tom give? Maybe the time has come. I'll divorce Allie. Above all, I'm happy that we're having a child. I'm grateful you got pregnant. At this point, I stopped her. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm sorry, you didn't want to hear this. It's not your fault, Kelly. Thanks, actually. Without this, I might never have realized. I lost all respect for Tom on the day of my surgery. Moreover, bringing his mistress to the hospital where his wife is admitted. Sis, are you really clueless about this woman Tom is with? From the conversation, it's clear she's from Tom's company. Haven't you faced any harassment until now? I have absolutely no clue. But it's only a matter of time before the woman who's pregnant demands a divorce, right? Whether she's really pregnant is another matter. It's like the ultimate weapon for a mistress who wants her lover to leave his wife. Tom, too, would say he's divorcing because of the situation with his mistress. That's a typical line from men who cheat. Maybe we should talk about it once? As I was lost for words, Kelly said, "Sis, lend me the keys to your apartment. I'm going to install a recorder there right now. The more evidence we have, the better it'll be for the divorce court." Kelly was already talking as if my divorce from Tom was a done deal. I didn't want to hurt myself anymore, but I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to hear Tom's true feelings. I handed Kelly the keys to my apartment. The next day, Tom came to visit me after work. Having heard their conversation the day before, I couldn't look him straight in the eye. "Is there anything you need? If there's anything you want me to bring, just request it." Would he go back to our home, where his mistress is, after this? How can he maintain such an unchanged smile, keeping pregnancy and divorce a secret? This is my suggestion. Why don't you stay at your parents' place for a while after you're discharged? I know Kelly has been updating me about your condition, but it would be safer, right? Imagining his mistress confidently staying in my apartment made me feel nauseous. He must be trying to distance himself from me. You look pale today. Are you feeling ill? Want something to drink? Is there anything in the fridge? Hearing these kind words, it's hard to believe he's really cheating. I knew it was camouflage not to get caught, but I still didn't want to believe it. The image of Tom, always a gentleman in front of me, was getting distorted. "Tom, aren't you inconvenienced?" I decided to probe him. "You are good at cooking but not so good at tidying up, right? Clothes left where they're taken off, things left open. Isn't our house turning into a mess? Once I'm discharged, cleaning will be the first order of business." "No, it's okay, Allie. You don't need to worry about that. I'll come again tomorrow." Tom left after less than 10 minutes that day. Then, for a week, Tom didn't come to visit me. Even though my discharge was approaching. I thought it might be time to retrieve the recorder. "Do you want to listen, sis?" I was scared, but knew it was better to face reality. The partner hints at pregnancy and divorce. I've edited it down to just the concerning conversations. Okay? "Hey, after you divorce your wife, are we going to live in this room? It's a pretty nice condo, spacious and must have been expensive. Are you still paying the mortgage? This place has been Allie's since before we got married. Wow, is your wife some rich heiress or something? Allie's dad runs a real estate business and owns several properties. This condo was a gift from her father. But no matter how nice the house is, I don't want to live in a house where you live together. Let's sell this condo and use the money to build our love nest. We can buy stylish furniture and create a comfortable environment. Just thinking about it excites me. Moving means we'll have to ask someone for help, right? I can't lift heavy things since I'm pregnant. But are you sure? I've never checked if I can sell this place. Don't be so pessimistic. If you've been married for 5 years, it becomes joint property, right? Even if you split it with the wife, it would still sell for a lot. This prime location condo must have been worth millions. This part was about the condo Allie lives in. What comes next might be even more upsetting. What more could they possibly talk about? Moreover, this conversation took place in my home. Isn't this just encouraging Sarah, the mistress? Why do you need so much money? Can't it wait until after you sell the condo? It's not like you need to buy anything right away. You don't understand women at all, Tom. That's why you're not popular. Wouldn't you be happier if I always looked beautiful? Look. I have appointments at the beauty salon and nail salon this week, and there are clothes I want to buy. Why are you acting like you don't have money? You don't need to pay the mortgage, right? You should have more disposable income than most. Well, there are expenses. Right, you spend it on your car? I don't quite get it, but you're customizing it, right? I bought an old car and am customizing it to my liking. Tinkering with cars and bikes is my hobby. So, you're not going to buy it for me? You already have plenty of bags, don't you? This is the new collection. I hate the thought of being the only one behind. Even so, didn't I just buy you a watch last month? To date a younger woman, you need money. Don't you understand that? All right. Sarah, you really know how to ask for things. I'll stop here. You probably don't want to hear any more lovey-dovey stuff. I had never heard Tom sound so smitten. Is this the real Tom? Next, there's a recording of Sarah talking on the phone inside the house. You'll see her true colors. She lived in a surprisingly spacious condo, Tom. Not exactly a gold mine, but selling the condo could bring in a good price. Even if I got half, that's like $1 million. What? Pregnant? That's obviously a lie. Who would willingly have a child with a man 10 years older? Just say I had a miscarriage at the right time, most men believe that. He's totally focused on me, so I'll use him as much as I can. You know, my plain office worker persona is just for show. I'm testing how many old men I can charm at the company. Of course, it's all for my boyfriend's sake. What? Spending money elsewhere? Of course, I am. At 23, worth of being office worker needs to be upgraded. I'm gathering designer goods now to elevate myself. Kelly stopped the recording there. I was speechless. Sis, it's better to act fast. First, make sure the condo is secured in a way that you don't lose out. We can't let this outrageous mistress have her way. And on this day, just before my discharge, my husband said, I'm remarrying because my mistress is pregnant. Move back to your parents' house after your surgery. Next to him stood Sarah, the mistress whose voice I had only heard. The condo we're living in is mine, he claimed. Idiot. You know nothing, do you? The one leaving will be you. That condo has been our joint property for the past 5 years we've lived there. I don't want all of it, just split it. What are you talking about? Are you stupid? Tom hasn't paid a cent for that condo. If you say you've been paying a loan for 5 years, maybe your claim could stand. But that condo was a gift from my father. And I lived there before we got married. It was given to me by my father. That makes it an exception to joint property. You don't even know this simple fact and just going along with what that woman says. Then what am I supposed to do now? Tom panicked. The condo is already being prepared for sale. Tom has no right to live there. If he enters without permission, he'll be arrested for trespassing. Thinking everything will go your way is a huge mistake. So, you knew about me and Sarah? I doubt the nerve of a man who can live normally with his mistress in the house while his wife is hospitalized for breast cancer. Wait, Tom, that's not what we agreed on. Sarah didn't expect things to turn out this way. Still so naive. If the condo can't be sold, how will you get the money? There's a child on the way. No house, no money, that's fraud. Your pregnancy is a lie, right? The ultimate weapon to catch a man? It didn't have to be Tom. If you're going to trick someone, at least choose someone high up in the company. What's the point in deceiving Tom? If you're going to do sugar dating, aim higher. I fought back just as hard. I've been fighting a disease. Grateful for ditching such petty lies and greed. It's pathetic to be a sore loser, isn't it? It must hurt to have your husband stolen by a younger woman. But isn't it just natural? Neglecting your husband because you're not feeling well leads to this outcome. You haven't been meeting his needs at night, have you? Then, isn't it understandable that he'd cheat? What benefit did he get from marrying you? Can't have children, and never know when you'll fall ill again. Should he live only for you? Of course, he'll say sweet things when you get married. Those words from Tom weren't lies at that time. But as time passes, it's impossible to stay at the same temperature. Please let him go. Sarah wasn't being defiant, rather she was speaking on Tom's behalf. It could make one mistakenly think Sarah genuinely loves Tom. So, Sarah, you're gonna stay with me, right? Even if it means starting in a small apartment with the three of us, including the baby in your belly. That's what you mean, right? Huh? What are you misunderstanding? I was just passing along what you have been complaining about to your wife. After all, you're worthless to me now. Might as well spill everything and clear the air. What about the money, then? Tom, even at this point, without any concern for his wife's health, brought up money. He must be really desperate for money. I don't care about that. It was Tom's goodwill, wasn't it? That's because you said we'd get half from selling the condo, anticipating a lot of money coming in. We even had a real estate agent confirm it could sell for $2 million. So I believed that. I was shocked to hear how far the conversation had gone. They wanted to sell the condo at any cost to cash in. Don't expect any sense from a 23-year-old woman. Everything I said was a shot in the dark. Please! Allie, can you lend me the money from selling the condo? Suddenly, I became the target. Tom looked as if he was about to kneel, completely cornered. After doing something this terrible, you have the nerve to ask now. When I was down with a recurrence of breast cancer, you were off making a mistress. I'll be filing for alimony, you know. Good for you, Sarah is pregnant. You wanted kids, right? Well, it's a fantasy pregnancy anyway. But, looking at things now, it seems you and Sarah are done for, aren't you okay? After all, Sarah has a younger, more handsome boyfriend. Tom's complexion changed. Sarah, really? His voice became sugary when addressing Sarah, which was frankly creepy. As if he believed he was getting younger. Who knows, but that's not your concern, is it? Then, at least pay me back the money, that's all I ask. Who knows what will happen? Sarah, you have all these expensive brands, but did you really need to go into debt to buy them? Did you know I was made a guarantor for your debts? I was astounded by his foolishness. Didn't he understand that under no circumstances should one become a guarantor for debts? Was he that blinded by Sarah? Anyway, I'm moving out of the condo today. Tom, you better start looking for a new place soon. We were going to live together, weren't we? Have I not been clear? I find no attraction in a penniless Tom. Sarah left the hospital room after saying that. Where did her confident face from when she arrived at the hospital go? Tom was left in a daze. I don't know how much debt Sarah racked up, but it's clear she won't be paying it herself. That's why Tom is stunned. We're getting a divorce. And I'll be filing for alimony. People who succumb to temptation and pleasure once will do it again. I pushed Tom away without a shred of sympathy. But I do want to thank you for marrying me. For choosing to marry a woman who might not be able to have children, who had a risk of breast cancer recurrence. I needed to say that. Your parents came to visit yesterday, didn't they? Ah, Kelly, you were out then. I had returned to my parents' home after being discharged. The condo found a buyer, and my father plans to give me another one. It's good to have a wealthy real estate agent as a father. See, Tom ends up penniless and kicked out. But that doesn't excuse what I've been through. I involved a lawyer for the alimony, and suddenly Tom's parents came. They paid the alimony in full on behalf of Tom. They just kept apologizing. Isn't Tom ashamed to make his parents do such a thing? It's really appalling. Thinking back on yesterday's scene, it pains my heart too. So, what happened between Tom and that mistress, Sarah? They're done for. Sarah was only after the money from selling the condo. She wouldn't glance at a penniless Tom. After all, Tom's company is full of middle-aged men. Sarah targeted the company from the start. They weren't planning to hire female employees, but Sarah forcefully attended an interview, charmed the interviewer, and got specially hired. Her ability to manipulate older men at her young age is something else. Well, in 3 or 4 years, her youth won't sell anymore. Maybe she'll marry that boyfriend of hers, what was it, Pippi? In the end, things went exactly as Sarah wanted. She squeezed everything she could out of Tom, even making him a guarantor for her debts, a total victory. Now, Tom is running from debt collectors. There have been collection calls at his work, and he's even been ambushed outside, leading him to quit his job. I heard this from Tom's parents yesterday. A year has passed since then. A year was enough time to heal the wounds of sorrow. At least for me.
Wow, sis, you look beautiful. You really look great in dresses, probably because you have that exotic look.
Kelly, maybe it's time for you to think about settling down too. I've had the luxury of having 2 weddings after all. I still want to enjoy myself for a while. But I had no idea you and that nurse were together. When did that start? He took care of me during my hospital stay and even after I started outpatient visits, always encouraging me with positive words. Being a nurse, he must have faced the end of life before. Yet he said he didn't want to lose me. Why did you keep it a secret? Romance between a nurse and a patient is considered taboo. So we really kept our love quiet.
I see. But I'm glad you've recovered. After such a breakup, it's great that you met someone even better. And you're pregnant too. Yes. I never thought I could get pregnant. I had resigned myself to the idea it wouldn't happen for me, so the joy was even greater. My new husband has brought so much happiness. With renewed spirits, I took my first step down the aisle.
Hey, it seems like the baby wants to say something, said my 8-year-old niece, glancing at my son's face. What? That's nonsense. Babies can't talk. My son laughed off what he thought was child's play. But my sister and I were startled and looked at my niece. The grandson blinked his big eyes several times and looked up at me and my sister as if he had something he wanted to convey.
It's true, I can hear this child's voice.
My niece insisted, tearfully staring at my son as if conveying the baby's words was her mission, even if my son mocked her. My son's wife watched this scene in astonishment. Then what is he saying? I'll listen, just for you. My son said with a condescending look. It wasn't a look one should give a small child. I swallowed hard, watching anxiously for what my niece would say next. My name is Tina. I am 50 years old, living with my husband and our beloved dog, Laura. Until 7 years ago, we lived with my son, Ken, and Laura, but after graduating from community college, Ken started working at a factory and moved out to live on his own. Ken was always rebellious, often not listening to what we said. No matter how much my strict husband warned him, he wouldn't listen, and there were times he got into trouble with the police. Each time, my husband and I would apologize repeatedly, sternly lecturing Ken. But it seemed neither the unpleasant experiences he caused others nor the police warnings bothered Ken, as he repeatedly got into similar troubles. As a child, he was like the neighborhood ringleader, bossing around his elementary school friends, which was still somewhat endearing. As he grew older, his delinquency escalated, causing injuries and troubles to others, leaving us, his parents, at our wits' end. We were worried about him until he graduated from community college. However, upon graduation, he landed a job at a company, and we were overjoyed, thinking Ken had finally turned into a decent person. Becoming a working adult, whether due to being busy or changing his ways, the calls from the police stopped. Living on his own, Ken seemed to have mended his ways. Finally, after years of difficult parenting, my husband and I congratulated each other. 2 years ago, Ken brought home the woman he wanted to marry, Lisa. At that time, Ken, at 25, was on the younger side for marriage, but we never thought the delinquent boy would ever get married, so we were overjoyed at his announcement. "This is Lisa, the woman I'm gonna marry. Met her in town." "Nice to meet you, I'm Lisa," said the woman Ken brought home, a slender beauty with a modest demeanor, stepping back behind Ken. "I'm Tina, Ken's mother." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." It was a mystery why such a lady fell for Ken, but perhaps he had a charming side we hadn't seen. "We're planning to get married next month," Ken reported lightly, but his usual confidence meant my husband and I didn't pry. If they had decided together, it wasn't our place to intervene. So, at work the other day, Ken quickly moved on the topic to ramble about his work. Most of it was boasting about how he had saved his workplace from crises or covered for his colleagues' misdemeanors. We half listened, but Lisa attentively nodded along the whole time. Indeed, if a woman listens to this well, it's understandable why Ken fell for her. Despite coming to report their marriage, Ken mostly talked about himself, impressing Lisa. In the end, Ken's marriage announcement turned out to be mostly him rambling on about whatever he wanted to talk about. When Ken went to the restroom, I couldn't help but ask Lisa if she was okay.
"Are you okay, Lisa?" He talks mostly about himself.
"Oh, I'm used to it, so it's fine," Lisa reassured me, replied like that as if it was nothing.
"If there's anything, please always feel free to talk to us. We're family now." "Thank you."
Her eyes were slightly teary, which surprised me. "Oh, sorry. Just some dust," Lisa said, wiping the corner of her eye. She might be experiencing the wedding blues. I remembered feeling choked up when I reported my marriage to my in-laws long ago. That day, I watched Lisa leave our house with a nostalgic feeling. To think Ken found such a wife, we can finally relax.
"Yeah, it's been a long journey, but we made it."
We congratulated each other on the upbringing of our son, and that night, we celebrated with some fine wine, getting drunker than usual and going to bed early. 2 years had passed since Ken and Lisa got married, and this year, they had a baby boy. His name is Henry, and from the photos, he looks like Lisa with a well-defined face. The thing is, my husband and I haven't met our grandson yet. Even when we contacted Ken to let us see the grandson, he'd say, "I've been busy lately," or "Lisa doesn't like it," and hardly agreed. Initially, we refrained from visiting right after the birth to not burden Lisa, but after several months without approval from Ken, my husband and I decided to visit Ken and Lisa's home unannounced. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. Hello. Ken and Lisa lived in a rental property in the countryside, about a 40-minute drive from our house. Lisa opened the door.
"It's been a while. How are you?"
Seeing Lisa after a long time, she seemed to have a frightened expression for some reason. She appeared thinner than before. Or perhaps more accurately, gaunt. "Sorry for the sudden visit. We just couldn't wait any longer to see our grandson. Is now a good time?"
"Oh, yes. Please come in."
Despite asking tentatively, thinking it might be a busy time, Lisa readily let us in. As soon as we entered, the smell of cigarettes hit our noses. My husband frowned. I was surprised, thinking, cigarette smell in a house with a baby? But didn't mention it and proceeded to the back of the room. Seeing our grandson sleeping in the baby crib in the living room, our cheeks relaxed. When we gently touched his small hand, he twitched but continued sleeping. "He's adorable."
"Thank you,"
Lisa said with a tired face that slightly brightened. "Is Ken not here today?"
"He went out with friends today."
"Leaving you and Henry behind?"
"It's usual for him."
Usual must mean Ken often goes out on his days off.
"Is Ken helping with parenting?" "I smelled cigarettes. Is Ken smoking?"
Lisa just looked down without answering, affirming the situation, and I felt very sad.
"I'll talk to him. Tell him to help you out more."
"Please don't." Hearing her firm refusal, I was taken aback. Despite Lisa being so worn out from childcare and housework, I thought of warning Ken, but perhaps for Lisa, it's unwanted interference?
Oh, no. I appreciate the thought, but he might think I complained.
Oh. Lisa was worried that if I complained to Ken, it would be her who'd be blamed.
But that would be tough on you, Lisa. I'm fine. So please don't say anything to him.
With Lisa insisting so much, neither my husband nor I could say anything more.
All right, but please talk to us if anything comes up. We want to help. Thank you.
Actually, Lisa was raised in a single mother's home, and her mother is currently hospitalized due to illness. So, for Lisa, aside from Ken, my husband and I are the only family she can rely on. We wanted to help Lisa feel a bit more at ease. Afterward, as Lisa sporadically shared about Ken's sloppy lifestyle and his terrible attitude towards her, it pained us to hear. We hadn't known that Ken was being so awful to Lisa while we were not around. Although Lisa refused, we secretly resolved to warn Ken if he continued behaving terribly. A week after my husband and I visited Lisa, on a Saturday when my husband said he had to work, my sister Sarah and my 8-year-old niece Ivy came to visit. Sarah and I have been close since childhood, and even as adults, we often spend time together like this. But this time, it had been a while since we last met, about half a year since I saw my sister, Sarah. Sarah and her daughter, Ivy, came to our house, and first off, they petted our beloved dog, Laura. Ivy, who apparently doesn't usually interact with dogs, looked at Laura with curiosity as Sarah said, "Isn't she adorable?" To which Ivy solemnly nodded. Then, I served tea to Sarah and Ivy, and we caught up on each other's lives. Unlike me, a stay-at-home wife, Sarah works part-time and was venting about her boss. This must be one of the few times she can relieve her stress. I listened to Sarah's stories, nodding appropriately. During this, Ivy, who had been playing with Laura, suddenly turned to us and stared at me with her big eyes.
What's wrong, Ivy?
Then, Ivy started, as if she had something on her mind. Laura says, "Thank you for always taking care of me." But she wants more frequent washes, not just once a month but maybe once a week.
Really?
I was baffled as Ivy began to express Laura's feelings. Looking at Sarah, she was just as surprised, saying, "Well, it's common for young children to pretend to converse with animals, but specifying the frequency of the baths was peculiar. Especially since it was accurate. I've been wanting to give Laura more frequent baths, but I've been too busy lately."
Did Laura tell you that, Ivy?
Yeah, she looked like she wanted to talk, so I asked her. At first, I thought Ivy was either lying or fantasizing. However, I was taken aback when Sarah mentioned, actually, this kind of thing happens quite often with her. Last time, despite the weather forecast predicting sunshine, she said a storm was coming and it'd be better to stay home. We had no plans that day, so we stayed in, and sure enough, the weather turned severe, just as Ivy said. Signs were even blown away outside. I was glad we didn't go out.
Really?
And there's more. She found my car keys right away when I lost them and talked with dogs we met while walking, just like now. No one believes it, but I've come to realize this child has a special gift. Sarah continued, patting Ivy's head. If what Sarah said was true, I too had to believe Ivy had some unique ability. Despite finding it unbelievable, witnessing this power firsthand left me no choice but to believe. Ivy, having relayed Laura's feelings, went back to playing with her as usual. And how about you? How have things been lately? Sarah turned to ask me as I recalled last week's events while watching Ivy.
Actually, I met my grandson for the first time the other day.
I began, sharing everything I saw at Ken and Lisa's house. How Ken left his wife and child at home to hang out alone on Sunday, his smoking habit, and his domineering attitude towards Lisa. With each detail I shared, Sarah's brows furrowed more and more.
That's terrible. Ken has always been a handful, but I thought he had gotten better recently.
Yes, but it seems I was mistaken. It's just not right for Lisa.
Indeed, and worrying. How about we go visit Lisa together next time? Maybe we can help somehow. Of course, we'll let her know beforehand. All right, I'll ask her.
The following weekend, Sarah, Ivy, and I visited Ken and Lisa's house again. After notifying Lisa in advance, it turned out Ken was out again, which was just as well. However, I couldn't help but disapprove of Ken leaving his family alone almost every weekend.
Hello, Lisa. Sorry for visiting again. It's okay. It's just me and the baby, so any time is fine.
Hello. Sarah and Ivy greeted Lisa for the first time in 2 years since we last met as extended family. Ivy rushed over to the crib where my grandson was lying, gently stroking his head. She seemed to like the baby. As we watched Ivy, we sat down at the dining table. Lisa looked even more exhausted from childcare and housework than before, prompting concerned looks from Sarah.
Has Ken's behavior changed since then?
It hasn't changed.
When I try to go out, he yells at me to stay in the house, and he does whatever he wants, like drinking and smoking.
If I even slightly resist, he says, "Who do you think is earning the bread for you guys?" Lisa shared, tears brimming in her eyes as she spoke about her daily life. Sarah offered Lisa a handkerchief.
Are you okay? I can't believe it. Makes me want to do something about it.
I was so angry at Ken's appalling behavior that I couldn't stand it.
It would be nice if we could find something on him, something that could get the police involved.
Sarah muttered. Hearing this, Lisa gasped.
It's not about the police, but lately, we've had debt collectors come to our house. Since my husband wasn't home, I told them they must have the wrong person, but they said, "This is Ken's house, right?"
Really? That happened? It's hard to ask, but Lisa, do you have debts?
No, I have no idea about any debts.
This house is rented, and we don't have any loans.
Sarah and I exchanged looks, wondering what was going on. Was Ken in debt without Lisa knowing, unable to pay it back? While we were swirling with questions and searching for the right words to respond.
What a loss today, just my luck.
We heard Ken's voice as the front door was roughly opened. Everyone's face froze as we heard Ken's voice. Huh? Why is Mom here? Ken glared at me, reminding me of his rebellious and delinquent days.
I'm sorry for intruding unannounced. But I was worried about Lisa.
Ken was startled not only by my presence but also by his aunt and cousin being there. However, realizing it was just family, he demanded Lisa to bring him some alcohol. Lisa hurried to the kitchen.
There's no more beer left.
What? That's your job as a wife to restock.
I'm sorry.
Ken retorted arrogantly, as if he were a king, and Lisa shrunk in response, apologizing. I couldn't help but shout, "Ken," but he didn't even glance at me, just glared at Lisa. Looking for a way to reprimand Ken, the baby in the crib began to cry. Lisa looked startled and started to move towards the baby, but Ken's fierce glare stopped her in her tracks. Sarah and I exchanged looks, trying to communicate silently about what to do next. That's when Ivy spoke up.
Hey, the baby seems to have something to say.
Ivy said this while glancing at Ken's face. What?
That's nonsense.
Babies can't talk. Ken laughed off what he thought was just child's play. But Sarah and I turned to look at Ivy's face in astonishment. The grandchild blinked his big eyes several times, looking up at us as if he had something he wanted to say.
It's not a lie, I can hear this child's voice.
Ivy insisted, undeterred by being ridiculed by Ken. Tears welling up in her eyes as she stared at him. Lisa watched in astonishment.
Then what is he saying? I'll listen, just for you.
Ken said with a disdainful look that should never be directed at a small child. I watched, holding my breath, as Ivy was about to speak next.
Daddy is planning something bad. Mommy, don't be fooled.
For a moment, Ken's shoulder twitched at Ivy's words. Lisa looked shocked. Sarah and I immediately understood that Ivy was about to use her mysterious ability again.
What do you mean, Ivy?
I urged her to elaborate. Ivy took a breath before continuing.
Daddy has been writing secrets in a notebook and always hides it behind the bookshelf. Also, I love Mommy. Daddy is scary, and he's crying.
Then Ivy walked over to the living room's bookshelf, pulled out a few books, and found a small notebook hidden behind them, handing it to Sarah.
Here it is.
Seeing the small notebook, Ken's face turned pale. Sarah, gauging the reactions of Ken and Lisa, opened the notebook.
This is a life insurance policy. Oh, the insured is Lisa, and Ken is the beneficiary. There's even a contract attached.
Now Lisa's face turned pale, and I took the notebook from Sarah to see for myself. As Sarah said, there was a life insurance policy worth over $200,000 taken out on Lisa, and I couldn't believe my eyes.
Ken, what's this all about?
I never thought my son, who had a history of delinquency, could do something so cruel to his own wife. I glared at him, wanting to confront him about this life insurance right away.
Damn, I had no choice. I ran out of money. Besides, anyone would get life insurance, right? It's not like I was planning to do anything to Lisa.
Ken rattled off excuses as if trying to justify himself. The fact he mentioned not having money was corroborated by the debt story I heard from Lisa. It was clear where the money had gone, considering how he leaves his wife and child to hang out every day. Probably wasted it on some frivolous activities.
Insurance is usually something you get for yourself, right? Taking out a life insurance policy on Lisa without her knowing and acting ignorant about it is just wrong.
My logical point left Ken at a loss for words. Then, Ivy spoke up again, adding fuel to the fire.
The baby told me. Daddy's been mumbling to himself that he got fired from his job for stealing money from the company. And he's planning to do something bad to Mommy to get money. What?
I exclaimed, shocked by her words. Fired from his job? Then what had he been doing all this time during weekdays? Lisa, too, stared at Ken in disbelief.
What are you talking about? You don't have any proof.
Ken spat back at Ivy. I stepped in front of Ivy, unleashing all the anger I had been holding back.
Proof? Ivy just told you everything. She can understand the baby's words, not just that. Finding this notebook wasn't a coincidence either. What Ivy says is true. You've seen the life insurance policy with your own eyes. Stop making excuses and apologize to Lisa.
I scolded Ken more fiercely than ever, heartbroken to know my son could attempt such a terrible thing against his wife. Ken, who had boasted about covering for his subordinates' misconduct, was actually the one causing trouble. It was disheartening and made me feel nauseous to think my own son could sink so low.
What the hell?
Ken ruffled his hair, twisting his face in frustration. But it was all his own doing. No one felt sympathy for him. After I scolded Ken, Lisa seemed to gather some courage and finally spoke up.
I never imagined you could do something so despicable. I want nothing to do with you anymore. Pay back the debt yourself. Goodbye.
With those words, Lisa took the baby and stormed out of the house. We watched in astonishment. Ken muttered complaints after Lisa left, but after being rebuked by Sarah and me, he ended up sulking. Though it was unexpected for Lisa to leave, I was glad we could expose Ken's wrongdoing. Looking at Ivy, who seemed content after speaking her mind, she stretched and said, "I'm hungry. Shall we go get something to eat?"
Well, we'll be taking our leave now.
With that, Sarah, Ivy, and I left Ken's house behind. A place that could be visited by debt collectors at any moment. I decided never to return to this house again, not just for Lisa's sake.
Why the hell?
Ken was still shouting until we closed the door, but we ignored his pathetic cries and left the building. A few days later, worried about Lisa, I contacted her. "I'm sorry to have worried you. I've gone back to my grandmother's house. Please feel free to visit Henry anytime," she assured me, which relieved me. Lisa had sent Ken divorce papers right after that incident. Ken was reluctant to agree to the divorce at first, but after Lisa insisted she would not let him see the child unless they divorced, he finally gave in, and the divorce was settled. Lisa, whose mother is hospitalized, said she's back at her grandparents' seeking employment and plans to place Henry in daycare soon. Ken's miserable days began, forced to work part-time daily to repay his debts. Initially, he begged my husband for money, but after hearing the full story, my husband was furious and told him, "Don't ever come back home." Thankfully, that meant Ken no longer sought help from us. I don't feel sorry for him. He brought this upon himself. Now, I occasionally visit Lisa and her grandparents' house to play with Henry. Despite everything that happened because of Ken, Lisa and her family have warmly welcomed Sarah, Ivy, and me. Ivy, do you know what Henry just said?
Yeah. I'm happy I can play with Mommy and Grandma.
Really? That's great. Lisa was just oppressed by Ken. She's actually a kind and polite, wonderful person. That's why she still treats us without any discrimination. For me, that was enough.
So, I'm counting on you to pay back the debt.
Suddenly, my husband dumped his debt on me and disappeared. No matter how many times I contacted him, I could never get through. What am I gonna do? I can't pay this huge amount. However, there were people who saved me when I was at my wit's end.
Mom, it's gonna be okay.
That was my daughter. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm 35 years old. I live with my husband, Michael, work full-time and juggling with house chores. I met Michael at a matchmaking party that was supposed to be a way to make up for something. I was nervous, but Michael approached me assertively, and before I knew it, we were getting along well and exchanged contacts. After that, as we kept in touch, we became attracted to each other. And then, we started dating. I never thought I'd end up dating a man I met at a matchmaking party. When we started dating, I mentioned Michael to my sister, Elizabeth. Then Elizabeth laughed out loud and said this. "You, dating a guy you met at a matchmaking party? I thought you'd quietly date someone from work." I've always been a quiet type, and even after I started drinking, I never went out for drinks with colleagues or friends. I'm surprised myself. Just went to fill the numbers, right? Yeah. When I showed her a photo of Michael, she exclaimed, "He's surprisingly handsome." After that, we talked a bit about each other's recent situations and then parted ways. Elizabeth is single and doesn't have a boyfriend. Apparently, she prefers being alone, so she has no intention of marrying or getting a boyfriend. I thought that was one way of thinking, but now I want to think about the future with Michael. How happy would I be if our relationship goes well, we marry, and have children? Oh yay! On the way back from talking to Elizabeth, my face naturally brightened. Years later, Michael and I happily got married. I remember bursting into tears when he proposed. We started living in a new apartment. We hadn't lived together before, so being with Michael all day was like a dream. We both worked full-time, so the time we came home varied. But still, we ate together and slept together. We made sure to spend a lot of time together. We had overlapping holidays, so we enjoyed lazy days at home or going out for drives, spending every day happily. Then, a change came for us. We had a child. I will never forget the moment she was born. She was a very small girl, fitting perfectly in my arms. This must be what happiness is. The mood of celebration came all at once from our relatives. We named our newborn girl Bella. After Bella was born, I quit my job and worked hard every day as a full-time housewife. Michael, seeing this, helped with the household and childcare despite being tired from work.
"I'll take care of Bella, you rest." "Thank you."
I thought I was lucky to have married Michael, but years later, I realized that was a mistake. A few years after Bella was born, Michael suddenly quit his job. Michael explained to me why he quit his job. Apparently, he couldn't get along with his new boss and was feeling stressed. But I wondered, shouldn't he have discussed it with me first? Sure, if my husband is suffering, quitting is an option. But now we have a family, and we were just getting by on Michael's income, so he could have at least talked to me about it a little. This is so sudden. Did you find another job yet? Don't worry, I've thought about that. His response was not very reassuring. Honestly, I was only feeling anxious, but I guess I had no choice but to trust Michael. Afterward, Michael quickly found a new job. That was a relief. I could go out and work too, but Bella is still young, and I didn't really want to make that choice. I just wanted to watch Bella grow up a little longer.
How's the new job? Can you manage?
Oh, yeah, well, kinda. Did something happen at work again? Problems with your boss or colleagues? No, it's fine. Don't worry so much. Look, I'll take care of Bella, you go take a bath. Okay? Thanks. Something seemed off. But I thought it might be too pushy to ask more, so I left Bella with him and went to take a bath. A few days later, Michael came home with a gloomy face. I wanted to ask if something had happened, but then I remembered that feeling from before. Yes, when Michael suddenly quit his job. Could he have quit again? I hoped my intuition was wrong. But that hope was quickly shattered. I quit my job. Why? It just didn't fit the people at the company. They kept ordering me around, being ordered around by someone much younger than me. I can't stand it anymore.
I see. Well, you can just look for another one, right? I'll help too.
Then, Michael's face suddenly turned scary. He raised his voice at me.
What's with that look? You don't like that I quit my job? You live off my money, after all. Talking down to me when you're just a housewife. Saying that, he threw his bag onto the living room sofa. Hey! Shut up!
Michael scratched his head and took out a drink from the fridge. He drank it all at once as if to quell his irritation. I had never seen Michael like this before. At the same time, an indescribable fear struck me. I had no intention of talking down to him, I just offered to help. It seemed Michael was quite irritated, and after yelling at me for a while, he heavily sat down on the sofa. I was listening to Michael, not understanding what was happening. Was this the day the rift between Michael and me began? From this point on, Michael would repeatedly get and quit jobs. We ended up living without a stable income. Hey, maybe it's time to get a proper job? At first, I tried not to nag, thinking of Michael, but things had come to this, and I couldn't help but speak up.
Shut up. You should earn the money then. You're relying too much on me.
But, Bella, I don't care. By this time, Michael had lost interest in Bella, treating her somewhat like a burden. He was genuinely happy when Bella was born, but he seemed like a completely different person now. No matter how much I begged, Michael wouldn't keep a job for long. After much thought, I decided to leave Bella with Elizabeth and start working myself. I'm sorry for leaving this to you.
No problem at all. Let's have fun together, Bella. Sure.
Bella had just started kindergarten, but I wasn't too worried. Part of it was because she was with Elizabeth, but Bella also seemed mature for her age. She would read newspapers and could even write stories with simple words. She was quiet and seemed wise beyond her years. Initially, I was honestly anxious. Would she be able to make friends? Could she communicate well with others besides me? However, it turned out there was no need for such worries, as she did make friends. As a parent, I felt very relieved. Given these circumstances, I judged it would be fine for me to start working. Surprisingly, I got a job fairly easily. Thus, I began working full-time. The salary was quite good. With this, I could support the family even if Michael quit his jobs frequently. It was hard, but my coworkers were all kind and I could enjoy working every day. A few years after I started working, Michael finally began to take his job seriously. Perhaps he found a workplace where he could settle down. That alone gave me some peace of mind. Simultaneously, I felt that Michael's mood was gradually improving. It was as if he had returned to the Michael I knew when we first got married. He began to show concern for me working full-time, asking, "Are you okay? Aren't you tired?" It was confusing because his personality had changed so much. But I thought maybe having a stable job gave him peace of mind, and I felt a bit relieved. Bella was growing up nice and healthy. By this time, Michael had become kinder to Bella and started playing with her as a father. Bella seemed to enjoy playing with Michael, which was heartwarming to see. However, I was still afraid to quit my job. Thus, I continued to rely on Elizabeth's help. "Bella, is she okay? Doesn't she feel lonely?"
Nope. She's really good.
As long as Bella was happy, that was all that mattered to me. I felt relieved and thought I should treat Elizabeth to a meal since I would continue to depend on her. A few more years passed, and Bella became a third grader, going to school happily every day. And our family relationship had improved, back to how it used to be. The times when Michael and I were at odds seemed like a distant memory. It was such a smooth period for us as a family. During this time, Michael made a suggestion. "Should we consider buying a new car soon?" "A new car?"
Yeah, the one we have is okay, but I think it's time. You know, maintenance is getting tough, and there's the smog check coming up soon.
Indeed, the car we were currently using was getting pretty old. Every time the smog check came around, the number of fixes seemed to increase, and the repair costs were becoming a concern. Indeed, maybe it's about time.
That's right. I thought you'd say that, so look, I got some catalogs.
Wow, already. Thank you. I was a bit taken aback that Michael was already set on buying a new car, but we looked through the catalogs together.
Bella, come here. Which car do you want to ride in?
Michael called Bella over, and eventually, the three of us were flipping through the catalogs. However, I had no idea that this action by Michael would lead to a tragedy. A few months later, we finally decided on a car, and it was delivered. It was a brand new car costing over $30,000. The car loan was in my name. Normally, it would be in Michael's name, but his job history was so unstable that I feared he wouldn't pass the credit check. I resolved to work even harder from now on to pay off the loan. I thought Michael felt the same. But my thoughts were completely off mark. Shockingly, Michael stopped coming home. He disappeared somewhere with the new car. Could Michael have been involved in some incident? While I was confused, I received a call. The caller ID showed it was from Michael.
Hello. Michael. Where are you now?
I was so worried that I raised my voice without thinking. "Hey, don't shout like that." "But, you suddenly disappeared, and the car is gone too. I was worried whether you ran away or got involved in some incident." I desperately explained how worried I was about Michael. But Michael laughed off my concerns and revealed shocking news. "Actually, I've fallen in love with someone else. I love her more than you."
What? What do you mean?
Just what I said. I found someone I like more than you. I've filed for divorce, so don't bother me anymore. Divorce. This is too sudden. I didn't remember signing any divorce papers, but then I recalled writing them during a fight with Michael. Once signed, divorce papers indicate intent to divorce. I regretted writing them in the heat of the moment. Oh, and there's the matter of my debt. Kind of your problem now.
Debt. How much?
About $600,000? You take care of it, will you? Saying that, Michael hung up. Is this even possible? Was that smile he always showed me all a lie? As I thought this, all strength left me.
Mom, are you okay?
Bella gently rubbed my back as I sat slumped on the floor.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
I said I was fine, but of course, I was not. How am I supposed to live now, burdened with such a massive debt? $600,000 is just too much to pay off. And the car payments are in my name too. I quickly started searching for my ATM card. Shelves, cupboards, counter, locker. I searched everywhere I could think of, but it was nowhere to be found. My ATM card was anywhere to be seen. I opened the banking app on my smartphone. The balance was reduced. I had no memory of withdrawing any money. The only person who could have done this was Michael. I couldn't get through to Michael at all. It's no use. I was lost, feeling utterly defeated. But right now, I needed to focus on earning money. There was no time to dwell on my worries. So, I redirected my attention to work. I didn't want to worry Elizabeth, so I told her nothing. Of course, I didn't tell Bella either. A few weeks after Michael had run away, I lost consciousness at work. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. What?
Emily! Are you okay?
Elizabeth. Bella was there beside Elizabeth. It seemed I had collapsed due to excessive stress. Moreover, I was forced to stay in the hospital for a few days for thorough examinations. Hospitalized. Once you're discharged, we should talk about Michael. I've heard everything from Bella. From Bella. Did you know everything? Yeah. I actually heard the phone conversation with Dad. I couldn't believe Bella knew everything. I wondered if Elizabeth would scold me after being discharged, which made me a bit gloomy. The next day, the examinations began. Then, to my shock, they found cancer. It wasn't too advanced, so they said I could get much better after surgery, so I underwent the operation. Afterward, I was discharged, which was good, but I wasn't in a condition to work for a while. I had no savings, no income. And on top of that, I needed to pay for the surgery and hospitalization costs. During this time, Elizabeth and Bella were the ones who helped me. Bella had detailed to Elizabeth about my situation and what Michael had done. Hearing this, Elizabeth was furious. She wanted to find Michael and make him pay for the debt and alimony. However, Michael's whereabouts were unknown. We don't know where Michael is. How can we claim anything? Then, Elizabeth had a suggestion. Michael had the car registered under your name, right? Since you're the legal owner, why not take it back first? Can we do that? When I expressed my doubt, Elizabeth revealed something surprising. Actually, I found out where Michael works. It seemed that Michael was working at a company in the same building as Elizabeth. Elizabeth mostly worked remotely, but she said she saw him occasionally when she went to the office. If that was the case, then we should go to Michael right now. I was ready to confront him immediately. If we left him alone, he might disappear somewhere. However, Elizabeth stopped me. It's reckless to go without a plan. I have a good idea. Well, not just me, but Bella and I.
Right.
Plan. Elizabeth and Bella exchanged looks. I had no idea what they were planning. While I was staring blankly, Bella smiled broadly and said, "Don't worry, we've got it covered." What were they plotting? Even when I tried to find out, they wouldn't tell me. However, a month later, I found out what Elizabeth and Bella had done. While at Elizabeth's house, a call came in. Looking at the caller ID, it was Michael. I ignored the call once, but he kept calling persistently. Wondering what he wanted, I hesitantly answered, and Michael screamed in panic.
Help me!
What are you talking about?
Just come quickly. I'm going to get arrested by the police if it stays like this.
Michael then told me his current location before hanging up. Elizabeth and Bella, who had overheard the conversation, finally revealed their plan. Actually, we had filed a stolen vehicle report. And it was Bella's idea. Isn't that great? Bella blushed shyly. I thanked Elizabeth and Bella and headed to Michael's location. It was a park relatively close to our house. Michael was surrounded by police officers. He is likely being questioned. We went to where Michael was. We explained the situation to the officers, convincing them to leave. Afterward, Michael led us into the car and started talking. Inside, a strong-willed-looking woman sat in the passenger seat. She was glaring at us. "Man, I'm glad you came. But why did the police come to me?" Michael seemed clueless, making me sigh.
Because I've filed a stolen vehicle report. The car is mine, after all.
Huh? We're already divorced. Now, Michael is essentially driving around in a car that belongs to someone else. It's only natural that a theft report was filed. He probably never imagined such a scenario. Bella then confronted Michael, piling on the pressure.
Why did you leave us, Dad? Why did you leave us with all that debt? Why?
Michael sighed wearily. But he said nothing.
Planning to stay silent? If so, I can have you arrested. You know you've committed a crime by using my name without permission, right? With that, Michael started to open up bit by bit.
The woman's name is Linda Carter. Michael had started working at a new company where Linda had recently been hired. They got to know each other at a welcome party and subsequently entered into a relationship. About 3 months ago, Linda became pregnant with his child. Indeed, Linda's belly was noticeably rounded.
So, you abandoned us for her.
Abandoned is such a harsh word. But it's true that you left us. Suddenly, Elizabeth jumped into the conversation, causing Michael to look bewildered. Watching this unfold, Elizabeth pushed forward. Then, Elizabeth started lecturing Michael about his past actions. Saddling me with his debt, his attitude towards his family, quitting jobs frequently, and his quick temper. It was unclear whether Michael was feeling remorseful or not as he kept his head down in silence. Linda seemed irritated by Michael's silence. I also asked about the reason for the debt, but he wouldn't say anything. Impatient with the silence, Linda blurted out a shocking truth. He took out loans in your name to buy me loads of designer goods. It was really the best. The result of Michael buying things for Linda was a debt of $600,000. What could he have possibly bought? From the looks of it, he must have purchased several items worth millions of yen each. It was utterly ridiculous. However, what caught my attention was Linda revealing the reason for the debt. If she was in on it with Michael, divulging this would put her at a disadvantage. As I pondered this, Bella asked Linda a question. Hey, your belly is pretty big. Is it a baby? When is it due? In about 3 more months, I guess? Due in 3 months? But that doesn't add up. If she got pregnant 3 months ago, there's still a long way to go until the birth. Elizabeth seemed to have thought the same, pressing Linda further. Is that child really Michael's? It can't be, right? It's impossible for the baby to be born in 3 months. Whose child is it? Elizabeth was direct and to the point, much to my surprise. Linda appeared ready to spill everything. Yeah, it's not Michael's child. I thought about hiding it, but it seemed like more trouble than it was worth, so I just let it out. You revealed the debt issue too? Yes, I guess Michael, you are of no use to me anymore, she said with a vulgar laugh. Being in this hellish situation made me feel sick. Michael looked at Linda incredulously, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing.
What do you mean by that?
Just what I said.
As Michael and Linda started arguing, the already dreadful atmosphere got even worse. But Elizabeth broke the tension.
We'll call the police now.
What? Why?
You both don't seem to listen, and seem to forget, using Emily's name for loans is a crime. Plus, driving around a car without permission. After all, Emily and Michael are strangers now.
With that, Elizabeth instructed me to call the police. Despite Michael and Linda's frantic attempts to stop me, I continued with the call. Soon, the flashing lights of a police car appeared. This was the moment to finally hold them accountable. For the debts and the car, everything needed to be settled. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Following these events, Michael and Linda faced legal repercussions. They didn't end up in prison but were ordered to pay me compensation for damages, cover the debt, and provide child support. Despite their pleas through lawyers for a reduction, the final judgment was not in their favor, especially since Bella had recorded their conversation in the car, which served as evidence. I wondered why Bella had recorded them. Upon asking, she mentioned that she got the idea from a drama she was watching with Elizabeth, where a conversation was secretly recorded. I couldn't help but admire Bella's smart thinking, while also wondering what kind of dramas Elizabeth was showing her. Now, Bella and I were staying with Elizabeth. Our homes weren't far apart, so Bella's schooling was unaffected. Thankfully, the car was returned, and Michael was dealing with the debt. If only Michael hadn't made such reckless decisions, he wouldn't have found himself in this debt crisis. Without a doubt, none of this would have been possible without Elizabeth and Bella.
I'm resolved to work hard every day, living happily with